When I was a kid, my dad let me watch sightings, unsolved mysteries, and we had those Time Life books on pyramids, UFOs, Bigfoot, etc. I read books on abductions, encounters of the third kind, all that stuff. But alongside the fascination, at night I was absolutely terrified. I was afraid to go to sleep every night because I was afraid those greys would come and get me. I still remember some of those more vivid nightmares 30 plus years later. Every night I would stay in bed until 1 or so when I finally dozed off. One time I woke up to a bright red light shining in through my window. I couldn't move at all, and I thought I saw shadows in the corners of my room. After what seemed like an eternity, the lights went out and I could move again. That scared me for years and years to come. Later, in my 20s, I would learn what sleep paralysis is and recognize that this is what had happened to me all of those years ago. I've slept much better since. Also, growing up and learning that all those shows were bullshit helped me out too. I was fascinated yet terrified once night came, especially since we had a skylight in the bathroom. I hated having to pass under that thing after using the bathroom. My dad and I watched so many UFO videos together, and we even got to see the late Stanton Friedman at our local university, where we had a slideshow of various photos. I would have recurring dreams. At least I hope they were dreams anyway, where I look out my window and say that I am not scared of you. I meant the aliens up in their ships, and that I couldn't actually see, but I knew they were out there, and a bright white light would flash and that would wake me up. I think it was the fear that would wake me up. Those, for the most part, went away once I got into my late teens, but I remember them reoccurring quite a bit. After finishing his job as a driver, went to the cinema on the afternoon of December 9th, 1992 to spend a few hours relaxing. But when he did not like the movie, he went out and decided to take a walk. Around 9:45 p.m., while walking along a tree-lined avenue, he clearly heard a whistle. He looked around and saw to his left, in the direction of an adjacent park, a flying object in the shape of a deep dish with a dome on top. Being scared, he hid behind a tree to observe the situation. Then suddenly he saw a door open on the side of the object, from which two individuals emerged whose appearance were similar to that of humans, approximately 1 meter and 70 meters tall. They had normal features apart from the olive skin color. Their eyes seemed to shine like those of cats in the night. His hair was shiny, short, and dark. They wore a very tight jumpsuit like that of yellow divers, with a dark belt and a rectangular box on the hips. The two moved in sync, and once they noticed, one of them pointed at him with his arm outstretched and index finger pointing, saying incomprehensible words that couldn't be traced back to English, French, or Russian. The witness had the impression that he had been asked a question to which, however, he did not respond. Suddenly, as if called by an order, the two looked at each other, turned, and still in unison, climbed the object's ladder, disappearing inside. The object rose about 100 meters and then, with the same hiss, moved away to the southwest. I will say that when this happened, roughly 4 years ago, I was lining my mind with lots of alien literature of alien movies. This was not a dream, and it wasn't the power of suggestion affected by the media. My soul and gut know this. What I experienced was like entering into a dimension higher than our own. It was beyond the realm of just vivid dreaming. It simply wasn't a dream. I am sure many here can relate for those who are 100% sure they have had abduction experiences that weren't fantasized or fabricated within the mind. I deeply want to get down to the bottom of who this particular group of people were. I realize there is a myriad of claimed species of extraterrestrials out there who are involved in these things. It's even said that our own government is capable of abduction scenarios. I am open to it being either or. Concisely put, the story recalled, I was brought up through my ceiling on a beam of light. For whatever reason, my body hit the ceiling, and they had trouble getting me through. They actually knocked me a few times to pull me through the ceiling. Once I was up there, I found myself slipping through the floor of a circular room. I felt drunk or drugged, as if I had had an entire bottle of whiskey. Yet, despite this sensation, my vision was better than my Earth life vision, and I was perceiving in 4K, 5K intensely. They initially brought me up to the ground of a circular room which was purple, specifically a dark plum hue of purple. There were hallways attached to the circular rooms. The hallways had computer-type systems on the walls. Instead of passing out, I tried to push myself up off the floor. I would stomach down my body position like doing push-ups. I looked down the hallway at the faces of the people on board. They were mostly all women, blonde with their hair tied up above their heads to keep it out of the way, and in dark blue uniforms. I may have seen 1 or 2 men and at least 5 or 6 women. As I shrugged to push myself up off the floor, I said the words, "Please, help me. Help me. I want to talk to you." Instead of helping me, each person froze, gaping jaws hanging open in total shock. They were all in shock that I was attempting to get up off the floor instead of just passing out. It's as if they were just waiting for me to pass out. I then collapsed and I don't remember anything after that. When I woke up the next morning in bed, I asked my partner if he remembered me missing. He said he slept through the whole night without waking, so really couldn't say one way or the other. How did I feel the next day? To be honest with you, utterly and hopelessly abandoned. I had the sensation that I had been abandoned by people who knew me, but I couldn't remember them. People who intimately knew more about me than I consciously remembered about myself. I felt a deep state of depression concerning the reality that they refused to help me when I begged, even pleaded with them. The truth is, while up there, I had hope that they wouldn't return me. I wanted to stay. My spirit couldn't have felt more excited. My emotions were along the lines of, finally, I'm off that horrible planet. They finally picked me up. So to say I was deeply depressed and felt abandoned the next morning is an understatement. My sadness was a deep kick in the gut sensation of total loss. It lasted for weeks. Even if that isn't what was really going on, I didn't want to come back. I wanted to stay in space with them far away from Earth. Years later, I began studying regression sessions from the Dolores Cannon material, which detail many abductions and starseed memories people have explored while in trance. Many of her clients have no interest in these subjects, and yet here they are remembering in full detail while regressed. Many are corporate business types that don't even have any metaphysical or spiritual leanings. They're far too busy surviving in the world, chasing job promotions, than to study such esoteric topics. It's difficult to say such people are making these things up when they don't even believe in the things that are leaving their lips. The common theme I noticed between her sessions and what occurred in my personal abduction experience was that the subjects all felt like the people who abducted them were their family, that they were somehow related to them. I know what I had experienced happened. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a scenario imagined in my mind. This was more real than anything you'd experience in your waking life. It was as if I was in another dimension on board the ship. Were these our own government people? Or were they some sort of genuine, otherworldly Nordic species? As the ET gossip goes, who has heard of blonde beings and dark blue uniforms? Which ones were they? Any suggestions as to what they did to me and what they were after? When I was young, the neighborhood kids used to play dark hide and seek or dark capture the flag, often pretty late at night. Our parents were okay with it as long as we didn't leave the neighborhood. It was the early 90s. We were basically thrown out of the house on the weekends. Anyway, one night after the game was over and everyone had gone home, my stepsister and I were hanging out in the front yard, just sitting on one of those green cable boxes talking. At one point, she stops talking and points into the sky and asks about a light in the sky. I turn and look to see it myself. The light was faint blue and was brighter and bigger than the stars around it. It was moving in ways that seemed impossible, and it became aware we were looking at it as soon as I locked eyes onto it. I don't know how to describe that. I know that. It was just this immediate feeling that it was looking right back at us. Suddenly, the light moved towards us almost in the blink of an eye. It went from being roughly double the size of a star in the sky to as bright as an airplane or helicopter searchlight instantly. There was no sound and the light didn't illuminate the surrounding area, which gave it a weird feeling. I tried to say something to my sister, but I found myself unable to speak, and I could suddenly barely move. I just remember turning my head to see my sister looking very scared, also unable to speak or move. I thought I heard a noise and the light started shining on me, which made me turn my head back towards the object, and then I felt a piercing light basically blind me. I was like bathed in the blue light. After this, things got a bit hazy, like I was meant not to remember it, even though certain moments are as plain as any memory from that time. I was in a place that was mostly dark, but there were lights that seemed to hover by themselves, with no visible technology, pole, etc., holding them up. I don't know if I was laying down or standing up, because there was a feeling of no gravity or downward force in any direction. I remember interacting with an entity that was human-esque, but seemed to be different, like a beautiful person, but they had no male or female characteristics. Completely androgynous, but with very symmetrical and smooth appearance to the face and body. Otherwise, very human-looking. They talked to me, but I was acutely aware that it was all in my head and not out loud. It was like moments of being conscious with moments of haziness in between. I don't know how to describe it. I was aware that they were doing things to me, but I don't remember what. But I do distinctly remember a piercing device they inserted just behind my ear on my right side. It went pretty deep, but it didn't hurt. It just felt almost itchy for a second, and they told me that they were taking a sample and depositing something that would allow them to remotely monitor me for some time. They explained that this was not the first time they had done this to me, specifically, and that they would continue to do so throughout my life, and that there were literally thousands of people they were doing this to. It was a scientific study of some kind. that they tried to explain to me, but I honestly don't remember the purpose. I was able to ask them for a few other things in the moments of being conscious, like where was my sister, and they explained she was having the same thing done to her. I asked them point blank if they were aliens, and they found it humorous and told me they were humans from the future. But I got the distinct feeling that this wasn't the truth. Again, I don't know how to describe why I thought this. It was just a different feeling when they told me this versus the other things they were saying. It felt like a lie or a simplification of some kind. After some time of being out of it again, I became aware that my body was bathed in blue light, and the darkness started to recede, and I was able to see the stars and the sky again. I don't know how long it was before I really understood where I was, but at some point I sort of came to and realized I was sitting on the grass next to my sister in the neighbor's yard about 50 or 60 feet from the original spot. My sister came to almost at the same time. We both immediately looked at each other and then to the sky, and the light was gone, but the sun was coming up. It was then we realized it had been hours. We didn't really talk about what had happened. We just felt the need to go inside and go to bed. It was years later before I ever spoke to my sister about that night, and she remembers much less than I do. She remembers seeing the light, being blinded by it, and then feeling weird, and then waking up beside me. To this day, she explained it away by us seeing a helicopter in the sky and just falling asleep because we were tired. She won't discuss it beyond that. I honestly had forgotten about this event until 2 years ago, when my wife mentioned that I had a spot behind my ear that kind of looked like a burn mark or a scar, but also like a pimple or a mole. She likes to pop things and was dying to let me get her to try and pop it. When she reminded me of it, the memories of the event flooded back into my head, and I was a bit emotional, but agreed to let her mess with it. She tried, but said nothing came out. It's still there and looks exactly as she describes it. Kinda like a mole, but also kind of like a scar. I've had MRIs and other scans throughout the years, but nothing has ever shown up, so I have no idea what it is, or if anything is inside there. I try to not think about it now because although I wasn't scared of it at the time, it is unnerving to think about now. That's my story as honestly as I remember.